Hello. I want to talk about systems of government because you guys in the USA might very soon find yourself being governed by a completely different system to that to which you've become accustomed since the late 18th century. So, first, I want to get this out the way, as is increasingly more often pointed out now. America is not a democracy. It's a democratic republic or a constitutional republic. That depends on which particular article you're reading. But the point is, it isn't a democracy. And it isn't a democracy for this reason. They had a democracy in Greece. Everybody got together in the public square, somebody orated, then there was a vote, and the majority won. This meant that minorities of any sort, and in this respect I'm talking about just philosophical minorities, they didn't get a say. If they were outvoted, they were outvoted. There was no control to make allowance for them, and dissidents of any sort had no voice. And it ended up with Greece destroying itself because the people who really, this is just a matter of mob rule, the people just kept on voting for war, one after the other after the other. And sooner or later, Greece just wore itself out. Now, in the American system, you don't have mob rule. You have representatives. And the people who set up the American Constitution came up with a very clever thing, the Electoral College, which was to balance out populous areas and the less populous, more agricultural areas, so that you got some sort of balance across the country and between the states. And this is an important aspect of the American version of a constitutional democracy. You might find it very hard to believe, but the British system, which involves a constitutional monarch, arrived at the same sort of ends with the House of Lords, which was filled with people from less populous areas, the countryside. It was the Lords, they were big landowners, so they tended to control the excesses of the House of Commons in the same way as the Electoral College does in America. It's a matter of convergent evolution. In Britain it's going a bit wonky now because Tony Blair messed with it. But even so, you can see it causes trouble because the Labour Party and almost any other radical you can think of keeps promising to get rid of the House of Lords because it gets in their way. Just like the Democrats want to get rid of the Electoral College, and for the same reasons. So in Britain, we have a version of a constitutional monarchy. So that's a democracy, a constitutional democracy, a constitutional monarchy, and now there's the absolute monarchy, in which one man doles out the laws which are then enacted by a group of unelected agencies. So let's get back to the American elections. Obviously, Joe Biden is suffering from some sort of mental deterioration. I cannot understand how it happened that he got put forward to be your president. There's an obvious weakness in your system that would allow something like this to happen. But for all that, I keep seeing comments under my videos from people who say they don't care. Anyone but Trump. This means they would vote for Biden, which is a vote for a man who will be in office but not in power, and decisions will be made by the mandarins of the Democratic Party. That is, people you didn't vote for. And I want you to tell me, in what way is this different from an absolute monarchy? No, I'm perfectly serious. You will be governed by a group of people that you didn't vote for. And furthermore, if their behaviour up to now is anything to go by, the Democratic Party, if in power, will fix things so that they can never be voted out anymore. Now, I want to talk about Haringey. I spent most of my life in London living in the borough of Haringey. In the 60s or the very early 70s, Haringey Labour Party got a majority. And then they packed they packed the system. They moved the borders so that there were, Haringey is full of a lot of poor people, a lot of immigrants, and a lot of idealistic socialists. And what happened was that when the Labour Party got into power, they reorganised the voting districts so that if there was a fairly well-off middle-class area, it was bundled together with a council housing area. And so they knew that the area would have a majority of Labour voters, because most of the people who come in as immigrants, they will vote Labour because they have this feeling that Labour will be more sympathetic to their financial needs, let's put it that way. So ever since the 1970s, Haringey has been a Labour fiefdom. And what's happened is just deteriorated. The education system is really bad. There's a lot of poverty, some of it avoidable. The social services are a joke, and there have been a couple of very well-known cases of children dying under the care of social services, and there have been far more that just haven't got into the news. Filthy streets, all the stuff that you know of in your democratic towns and cities in America. And for the same reason, the reason that San Francisco is now a total mess and Haringey is a total mess is not so much because it's filled with idealistic people who believe in a socialist system, but it's because those people can't be voted out, so they can be as stupid or as lazy as they want, and they're still in power. And that's the big problem. It's not socialism so much as the fact that socialism always organises itself so it can't be outvoted anymore, and then it gets lazy and corrupt and up its own, fundament. And that's what happened in Haringey. So I've seen this happening. And what the Democrats will do if they get into power in America, they'll do exactly what Haringey did. They will change the voting districts, they'll get rid of the Electoral College, and they'll pack the courts so that it's impossible for any Republicans to outnumber Democrats in the voting stakes. It's going to be very difficult, and you're going to be really stuck if that happens. If they can put up somebody with such obvious mental disability as Joe Biden has, and completely straight-faced put this person up for election, then it means that the next election, they just, they'll put up anybody because they know they'll be able to get away with it, because by that time they will have weighted the dice in their favour. So again, I ask all you never Trumpers who say, oh, I'll vote for Biden because it's not Trump. I'm going to ask, in what way is this going to be different from you voting America to be run by what amounts to an absolute monarchy? Think about it. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the Grannyopteryx design or Grambo. with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.grannyopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share, share, share.